Hello and welcome to another episode of Dungeon Master Corner. Today we'll be going over combat and the Warhammer Fantasy setting. So just like regular combat in any other setting, it's comprised by your surprise round. Easiest way your surprise round is to get a drop on an enemy, either through using concealment to set up an ambush versus their perception roll. Another easy way is maybe a silent move, so you can sneak up behind someone and attack them. It is important to try and get your surprise rounds when you can. It automatically converts a 30% bonus to your attacks. Also, if they have shields, they're not knowledgeable of the attack, so they can't actually use your shields to defend themselves against range attacks. So having a bunch of archers along a path, well hidden, will go a long way of quickly taking down some enemies. But today we're just going to do a simple one-on-one. On the left we have Elma Wineworm from the last episode, and to the right we have a Gore. So first off, obviously what we're going to do is start rolling initiatives. So let's select a token. So your initiative is always just 1d10 plus your agility. So having an extraordinarily high agility can actually make things a lot easier for you by simply just going out a lot quicker than your enemy. Obviously, if you're 9 points, well, if you're 10 points ahead, you will always win your initiative, no matter what the opponent rolls. This will just make your life incredibly easier. First hit, if you take them down in 1 or 2 hits quicker, makes your life a lot easier and safer. Alright, so for whatever reason they don't actually add, oops, so I'll manually add them, and they should have automatically added in. So we'll do 45, and the Gore is 38. Alright, so that gives your initiative. So Elma would technically get to go first. So the first thing she's going to do is she wants to get her scythe out, for magical scythe. So first she's going to do is do a channeling test, because it's a half action. That's a failure, but she will now just cast a spell. And Arcane and Reaping Scythe. We used 2 of her magic. No channeling success, so you failed. Ingredient used, yes. Yep, she easily casts her spell. So now she has her scythe in hand, ready for the Gore to come in. Now the Gore, so that's 2 half actions, so her turn is done. So now the Gore, she is in with his charging range, so he will just charge straight ahead for 9 squares. So now on the actual character sheet, you can see that I'll go over to the weapons tab. This is where obviously I have Gores for a bunch of different weapons, but for this one we'll just do a hand weapon. So we'll roll the hand weapon, and the modifier will be 10 for charging, and he rolled an 80, so that's going to be a miss. So now it's Elma's turn. She's going to go back. I'll put up her character sheet. Yeah, so this is where her spells are, so we'll go back to her weapons. And she has a quarterstaff, but she wants to use her Reaping Scythe. So now she is going to do an all-out attack. So that'll give her a plus 20. She has a plus 10 from weapon skill from her weapon skill from her scythe. With her base of 43, she's at 53, so that'll put up to her 75% chance to hit. Doing an all attack is quite nice, gives you a plus 20, but since she doesn't have a dodge or parry, which all attacks basically negate, you can't use a dodge or a parry. It doesn't matter because she doesn't have them naturally, so she'll just go for the all attack. Now, with the all attack, it's 20 modifier. Unfortunately, it's going to be another miss. Now, the Gore, is going to do an attack and drop into a parrying stance. So that will be a miss, but he'll get a free parry on his next turn. Once again, she will just do an all-out attack. And this will be her... actually, no. What she'll do is she'll just do an attack with her scythe. With no modifier. And that will be a head hit. Now the Gore will try to parry. He doesn't have a shield, so it's just a parry with his hand weapon. So just on this button right here is your parry. And there'll be no modifiers because they don't get one. And that'll be successfully parried. And next she will cast one of her spells. Go to notes. Be one of her lesser spells is going to be Etheric Armor. So it will give her a bunch of armor based on her magic characteristic. So we hit the cast button. Amount used, choose dice, no channeling, and yes ingredient. And it was 9 and a 3, easily successful. So now she gets 2 additional armor points to her body. The Gore is going to go back in and do an attack. But he's going to do an all-out because he just wants to do some damage, and that will be another miss. Now Alma will have to do a willpower test to keep her scythe. And it's with a 52% base. She is successful, and now she has the extra advantage of the armor, so if she gets hit, she'll take a reduced. So now she's going to go back and to do an all-out with her reaping scythe. And it'll just be an additional 20 for an all-out. So that will hit his left arm. Now we'll go back to her character sheet, and we'll just hit the damage button because the Gore does not have a parry, and he doesn't have a dodge. It doesn't matter, he's in a full-out attack, so he gets neither either way. And we'll just hit the damage button for a nice big 17 damage, which is right down here. So she gets her strength bonus, which is 3, 5 for the damage weapon, and 9 for damage roll. So almost a critical. Now, if we look at the Gore sheet, if you go to the armor tab, you'll actually see a little ragdoll. This will be all the different armor points to different locations. So the head and legs, they'll take 4 damage reduction. So she did 17, that would have been 13 points of damage she just did. If it would have been the body or arms, it would have been 5. So now we'll just subtract those from the wounds. So 13, that will put him at 0. Plus there's an additional 1 left. So when you hit with 0 wounds, you're not automatically knocked out like in other games. Because whenever you take damage excessive of your wounds, you start rolling on critical value charts. They are in the core rulebook. There's a chart for legs, arms, chest, and head. So it's just you take the modifier, you roll a d100, and you just line up on the chart where it is. Luckily with roll 20, it is quite simple to do. So you just pull up the character sheet, and at the bottom here, it's a critical roll. Oryx Fury is something different. We'll get into a little later on. So you just hit the critical roll button. It'll ask you for your hit location. So we hit him in the left arm. Critical value, it goes up to 10, but we only did 1. And luckily it will just give us all the nice information there at the bottom. So anything, the hand is incapacitated until medical attention is received, so normally it's a heal check. And anything held in the hand is dropped, except shield. Shields get strapped. So he's just using a hand weapon, and it's going to be in his right, so that doesn't actually affect him in any way. And if you are curious, the critical value chart is right here. So you roll a 1, and these are all your numbers, and obviously the higher the number is, the more deadlier it is. So if you're rolling a 1 and you rolled, let's say, a 40, you'd be a 4. If you did a critical value of 5, that becomes a 9. And then these are just some of the effects. So let's look at the body real quick, because that's a fairly good ones to get. Well, obviously head would be the best one, but so an effect of 1, the wind's knocked out, they suffer 20 to all their checks. 2, struck in the groin, they can't take any actions for 1 round. Up to, you're stunned for 1d10 rounds, all the way up to just basically instant death. When you start getting to that's like 9 and 10, it's always instant death. 7 and 8 are pretty much death. Chance of bleeding out. Also, a big one is always to take a look at is for number 8. Usually for number 8, so you end up losing something on your character. So if I were to score this on a critical chart, the spine is pulverized. At the end of combat, if they are to survive, you have to make a toughness test or become permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Obviously, that would be absolutely devastating for a player character. At that point, for most characters, you can just have them retire, make them become an NPC, and just at that point, you'd probably have to roll up a new character. Obviously, unless you have a fate point where you can just kind of nullify the effect. That's pretty much one of the worst ones you can get for a permanent disability. For the head, you'd lose an eye, which can be alright. You can still play a character if you lost an eye. The characters have a negative 20% to ballistics, and negative 20% to all skills and characteristic checks relying on sight. So if you're a ranged character, that is absolutely devastating. If you're mostly a melee player, it is still doable. For legs, you'd lose the bottom part of your leg, knee down. And for arms, you'd lose part of your arm. Then again, if you're sword and shield, if you lose your left hand, not absolutely devastating, because you can still strap a shield to the, and you can switch from left to right. But just be careful whenever you're in combat, because the effects can be quite devastating. But the gore is still alive, so we'll continue on throughout the fight. So now we'll just do another attack with the gore. There we go. Weapon. Now let's just do an all-out attack. He will hit, and she doesn't have a dodge or parry, so it's just straight damage. Unfortunately, I rolled for the gore. He rolled a 1 on damage, so he only did 4 points. So we pull up Alma. On our character sheet, with her toughness bonus alone, she has 4 points. And with her Etheric Armor, she actually gets to 6 points, which actually absorbs all of the damage done by the gore. So that makes his attack base, even though he landed a hit, he didn't actually do any damage, because her toughness and Etheric Armor more than absorbed everything. There are certain attacks through magic that can actually bypass armor and toughness. Some natural means like fire. So if people are having a high toughness and armor, there are still ways to take them down. Just gotta be a little more creative. Now with that, we'll go back. she'll get to do her attack. So let's do a quick willpower. And unfortunately she failed. Well, that's okay. She can go reach into her spell book, do an arcane test, or sorry, she can cast a spell. So this one here, if she's able to touch someone, and they're at 0 wounds and have already taken a critical hit, she can instantly dispatch them. So we will just do a cast of that. So we'll use 2 spell dice, no channeling, and ingredient. Yeah, so she rolled a 7 and 2. So she was easily able to cast it, but now she still has to touch the creature. So it will be a weapon skill test. So let's go down into your main profile here and just do that. And with her feat fast hand, she gets a +20. She is successful. The creature doesn't have a dodge or parry, so he is instantly dispatched. So he is now dead, and Alma has 1 without a scratch. So obviously he is a bit more overpowered than the actual Gore, but if he were to do something like land a critical, which we'll go over right now, he could have actually easily won the fight. So on the weapons page, you'll have this thing called Oryx Fury. So what it actually does is whenever you roll a 10 on a dice to deal damage, you get Oryx Fury. If it's a melee or ranged, it's just matching the target number to hit, including all modifiers. So let's say she's a 53 to hit, and she did an all-out attack, that puts it up to 73. If she were landed a critical hit, all she would have to do is roll under a 73 again. So we can just go ahead and hit Oryx Fury. And it'll give us a target number, so let's just say this 73. And submit. Now she was able to roll a 51. Her target was 73, so it is successful, and she does an additional 5 damage. Now let's say that dice came up as a 10. She would get another Oryx Fury, so she can roll the text number again, roll under it, roll another damage dice, and add that to the top. So you keep doing that until you either fail your Fury or you roll a dice damage of less than 10. The most I have seen is three Oryx Furies in a row, so absolutely massive damage. Doing like 43, 45 damage in a single hit, which the max health you can get as a player is 23, even with a toughness bonus of like 7 and full plate. That would have just absolutely devastated the character. Yeah, you have been almost pretty much instant death for that character. So you can do an outstanding amount of damage with Oryx Fury. You can do it with spells as well. If this spell actually did damage and I rolled a 10, this macro automatically does it for me. So your target number is always your willpower. So having a very high willpower will make Oryx Fury and for spellcasting a lot easier. She still has a 52, which is almost a 50-50 chance, slightly in her favor to get a Oryx Fury, and that rolled a 10. So you would actually get an additional 10 on top, and which you would do another Oryx Fury on top of that. So that's kind of how criticals work in the Warhammer Fantasy. Now, let's quickly talk about health and healing. There's 4 states your character could be. No damage, lightly damaged. Lightly damaged if you have 4 or more wounds. Heavily damaged if you have 1 to 3, and critically damaged. Healing works. There's only about 4 casters who get any kind of magical healing. You can only do it once per day, and after an encounter where they have taken damage, could you redo a healing or a heal test. You get one test, that's it. So if you do fail heal it, they don't gain the health. There's a heal skill. You just do the test. If you're successful, if they're lightly wounded, they get 1d10 health back. If they're heavily or critically wounded, they only gain 1. And to actually heal other hit points is just to rest per day. You get 1d10 if you're lightly wounded, and if you're heavily or critically wounded, you only gain 1 health. So if you're critically wounded, unless you're almost through a dungeon, you can kind of stay safe. It's usually recommended to leave, go rest somewhere, get some health back, preferably in a town, because if you're out in the wilderness, you never know what, a small pack of wolves can take out a group of player characters if they're not careful. Now, for a quick side note, when you're doing fights, there are also other ways you can modify your attacks. Especially for melee, it's super easy doing your aim or all-out attacks. You can do outnumbering. You can knock someone prone. You get a bonus to hit. So there's a lot of ways to adjust your numbers. Starting off characters, you usually be sitting about a 36 to 40 in some of your combat stats. So it's important to try and go over the book and just try and get as many advantages as you can. Because even so, I've seen people who have like a 90% success rate, and they'll still roll like a 96 and then still fail. That's just the ways the dice work, but you always want to stack everything in your favor as much as you can. So I think that covers about everything I wanted to go over today in the combat, damage, and healing. Combat is quite exciting. Once you start getting a lot more moving parts, a lot of enemies, so they're hiding up and firing down onto people, and they take cover. It's such a fantastic combat system that, unfortunately, gets kind of overshadowed by other, like D&D. You can do a lot of cool stuff if you're a caster. If you're a melee, not so much. But with this, you can really let melee characters actually shine by doing a lot more things in combat. You kind of wade through it. It is dangerous, but it's also super rewarding when you just stand your ground, defending yourself against multiple combatants, and just getting your choice attacks in while you can. So with that, guys, if you made it this far, please leave a like and a comment. Let me know what your thoughts about this system or anything I've been putting out so far. And if you're enjoying this and my other content, please do subscribe. It goes a long way. Last month we've had some huge growth. I got a couple more subscribers. I got 300 views on my videos, so I'm super happy on how this is going. I would love to hear from you guys, and we can talk and kind of build a community together around role-playing and games and other hobbies you guys enjoy. Probably the next couple weeks I'll be hopefully trying to put together one of my mead videos together about how to make mead and show off some of the stuff I've made over the summer. So look forward to that. But with that, I think we'll call it a day. Thank you again so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, take care.